All right, guys, let's talk about CSS animations. Yeah, you know, boxes moving around, things being animated on the screen, all these things, right? So animations are something relatively new to the web. Historically speaking, it was very challenging to animate stuff. Yeah, in the past, we used things like Flash. Do you remember Flash? Yeah, to animate things, but not anymore. Thankfully, now we can perform amazing and performant animations natively on the web browser without the need of any plugin or dependency. So today I like to play around with animations. To be completely strict, some people get a bit confusing here, but when talking about animations, so there are two walls here, two types of animations. First of all, we got transitions, and then we got animations. So with both tools, we can perform visual animations, but technically speaking, they are different. So today I would like to explain the differences. Yeah? All right, so as usual, I got a Hello World application. There is nothing on it. At the end of this session, I'd like to show you, by the way, a very interesting tool to facilitate the process of creating animations. You have, I think it's a secret activity on Wednesday, 13th of November. Have you checked the calendar? No? So on the 13th, it's Wednesday definitely. Say it again? Trainline? Are you going to Trainline? No, not me. No, this is the week after. No, on the 13th of November, there is a secret activity. So there are no events on that day. You're going to be doing something different. Yeah. And even though I'm not going to tell you obviously what are you going to do, what we're going to see today is going to be very helpful. Yeah. So please open your eyes, listen to it. Cool. So first thing, transitions. I'm going to start with transitions because they are way simpler to understand. So again, I got my web application. Let me zoom it a bit. Blah, blah, blah. So let me zoom it a bit more. Yeah, I hope this is readable enough, right? So as usual, first thing, let's delete everything. And now I'm going to add a box. Div, class name, box. Hello, people, right? So now, back to my CSS. How do I refer, guys, to my sexy element? Dot something like that? Dot box, right? Cool, dot box, I agree on that. And now, let's do some basic styling. So, for instance, font size, 50 pixels, padding. What's the padding, guys, by the way? Space around. Yeah, that's a space inside of the box between the boundaries of the content, could be the text, could be another box, and the border, inside. And now background, color, green. Let's change the color to white. This is beginner training, right, on CSS pretty much. And now let's add some dimensions to the box. So width, 200 pixels, height, 200 pixels. Yeah, square box. Let's see if it works. Yeah, of course it works. Hello, people. Yeah. So now, I would like to animate the box. I want to increase it, to make it bigger. Yeah. For now, let's increase the width. Then we can maybe combine it with the height. Let's make the width of the box larger. So my plan is whenever I hover the box, it should become bigger, right? So can anyone tell me how to capture the hover event on CSS? Dot box, colon, hover. That's correct, yeah? So that's mouse hover. That's the way you can perform user interaction somehow in CSS. Dot box, colon, hover. So then with 500 pixels. So let's see what happened. Nice. You see? Clearly works. It's not animated at all. Maybe not great, but clearly the user interaction works. So now I would like to make that size change a bit more progressive. Yeah, at the moment we have two states: collapse, expand, collapse, expand. But I would like to, to have a fluid animation. So to do that, the only thing you need to do is to create a transition. A transition looks like that. Transition, colon, and then which property do we want to interpolate? The width, correct. This is like CSS. Pay attention to any change on the width. Then we can specify the type of transition. For now, let's keep it linear. We'll talk about it in a minute. And finally, the duration, how long the transition will take to complete. 2 seconds, 2s. That's it. Yeah. First of all, the property we want to listen to, the width, the type of animation, linear. That means that the animation will run at full speed from the beginning to the end. And finally, the duration, how long the transition is going to take until it's over. And now let's see what happened, guys. Look. You see? Much better, right? It's a bit less aggressive. If you don't like the duration, of course, you can change to 1 second, whatever. Yeah, you can play a bit. You see that the speed is linear. Yeah, it goes full speed and it stops suddenly. This is not the most popular way of animating stuff because it feels a bit not natural at all. If you are driving a car, unless you have a Tesla in ludicrous mode, you don't go to full speed immediately, right? So you accelerate, and eventually, when there is a pedestrian crossing the street, you stop slowly, right? The speed does like that. Yeah? So this is what we call easing. Ease. So you type ease. Look at the change now. It's a bit hard to see, but if you pay attention, you can see it accelerates and decelerates. Yeah? Yeah? Feels a bit more natural. Any questions so far? No? So, I mean, transitions, that's about it. This is why it's great, because it's very simple, right? Let me show you DevTools. DevTools are a big help to understand transitions. Right-click, inspect, and now, let me zoom it a bit. Yeah, it's going to be a bit complicated, but I'll do my best. Yeah. So, again, you remember you can select elements. If I click on that button on top, I can click the box. And now, look at how sexy this is. So in here, I can do many interesting things. First of all, please note the animations tab at the bottom. Why this is interesting? Because, look, when I animate my box, you see Google Chrome is recording. You see? That's pretty cool, right? I can replay the animation as many times as necessary. And something very interesting is, imagine that the animation runs very fast. For instance, let's put 0.1 seconds. It's almost immediate, right? Because we're going to have a super fast, blazing fast application. You see? Very fast. But imagine that we want to debug the animation. We want to slow it down a bit for testing purposes. Yeah, of course. We can put here 20 seconds, yeah, if you want, right? If you want. And then, yeah, you can ruin the productivity of your day. And this is having one animation. What happens if you want to slow down the entire application because you have many boxes moving up and down, right? This doesn't scale. However, thankfully, Google Chrome recently, maybe a couple of years ago, they added that. So you can slow down animation. Look, 10% of 0.1 seconds. First of all, full throttle, 0.1, very fast, right? Now at 10% speed. Yeah? So for debugging purposes, that's really good. Basic math questions. If at full speed it takes 1/10 of a second, at 10% speed, how long will it take the animation to complete? 1 second. Fantastic. Fantastic. And at 25%, how long will it take to complete? 1/3, 1/5, 1/6, a quarter, right? 4/10 of a second. Basic math. That has nothing to do with coding. Yeah, that has to do with what you learned when you were 11 years old. All right. So I got my animation in place. Sorry, my transition in place. But now imagine that I want to perform multiple transitions on the same element. So for instance, I also want to change the height. You see? I want to change both width and height in parallel. What do you think, guys? Will the height be transitioned? No. Look. Let me change the speed, sorry, to 1 second. Look. Oh. You see? So the width works fine, but the height doesn't. If I slow it down, 10%, pop. Yeah, and same thing on the other way around, of course. So how do we combine both? When you set up a transition, you can pass a comma-separated list of elements. Comma, height is 1 second. You see? Comma-separated list of transitions. So now, much better, right? And of course, they're independent. They're independent. So for instance, I can say the height takes 2 seconds. Oh, look at that, look at now. So now it will take double time to set up the height and the width. You see? So again, you can play around with these aspects. One more thing about transitions. This is one of my favorite tools of web tools, of dev tools. Let me, for simplicity reasons, let me keep one single change, only the width, yeah? Width, fantastic. Look, on dev tools, you see the animation type, let me zoom it a bit. The animation type is ease, yeah? So if I click here, look at how cool this is. You can play around and you can build, visually speaking, the type of transition you want to apply. And that little ball on top will give you a visual representation of how will it look like. Yeah? One of the reasons why I love that is to applying bouncing transitions. Look. So if I do something like that, you see, it's like a bouncing ball. And then what? First of all, let's close that and let's try the animation. You see? You see the bouncing? Again, these changes are not persisted yet. So if you're happy with it, you need to copy it and then paste it into your CSS. So now, if we refresh, we got our sexy bouncing box in place. You remember I told you last week that I'm not a big fan of comments into the code because the code should be self-descriptive. However, there are exceptions. To me, that could be a good exception. If I had to review that code, the first thing I would say is, what the hell that means? Cubic baser 0.37. Who did that? Why? I am unable to understand what that means. So if I have to commit that code, I will do performing bouncing transition, something like that. And then the reader will say, oh, right, this is just a bouncing box. Yeah, easy, I'll get it. But without that command, I have no idea what is that doing. I have no idea, seriously. Yeah, and I guess no one has any idea. Cool. Any questions so far? No? All right, so this is a transition, right? It's pretty simple. Historically speaking, there was a good reason of using transitions over animations that we'll see in a minute. Imagine that we are using a very old web browser that doesn't support transitions. In worst case scenario, if your browser doesn't understand that line, That's the equivalent of doing that, right? So what that means, if you have a very old browser, it will perform like that. It's not perfect, but hey, still that's the trick, right? So that's a good reason why transitions became so popular so quickly. If you have an old browser, it just changes from one state to the other. But if you have a new browser, it does a trick. Yeah? So transitions are backwards compatible. That's a good reason of using them. Yeah? I mean, today you are likely to work with modern browsers, blah, blah, blah. Yeah? I don't think you're going to work on any company dealing with Internet Explorer 11, yeah? Things like that, or Internet Explorer 10, unless you're a contractor making 700 a day. But that's a different story. Cool, so this is about transitions. Now let's talk about animations that are, I'm going to essentially try to build something very similar, ignoring the bouncing. So let's go back to the easing. So I like to build that, but the same example using a different approach, animations. They are a bit more complicated, but way more powerful. The main difference between a transition and an animation is the transition reacts to a change. So whenever there is a change, whenever there is a new CSS class, whenever there is a user interaction, then the transitions take place. Yeah? I need to do something as a user. I need to do something. Hovering, clicking, I need to take an action. Animations, however, they don't require any user interaction. You know, when you visit a website and you get a pop-up from the top, do you accept cookies, all these things? Mm-hmm. You didn't do anything. You just visit the website. And pop, suddenly something happened, right? This is because they are using an animation. So let's talk about animations. So I'll leave some of the styles. I don't want to hover the box. I just want, as soon as I refresh the page, I want the box to expand its width. So we need to look after a few properties here. First of all, the most important one. Animation name. What's the name of your animation? That's up to you. I'll call it expanding box, for instance. Yeah? Why do we need to do that? Because now, this is important, guys, we need to add what we call keyframes. If you've been doing a bit of video editing with Pinnacle or with Adobe Premiere or things like that, you may be used to dealing with keyframes. So keyframes are states of your animation. And they look like that. Add keyframes, then the name of your animation, expanding box. And now we need to set up a bunch of states in the animation. In this most simplistic way, from, so what's the original state of the animation? So width, 200 pixels, height, 200 pixels, and then to whatever, yeah, width 200 pixels, not 200, sorry. Let's only talk about the width for simplicity reasons. So width 200, width 500. That's the most basic animation. That won't work yet, I believe. Exactly. If I refresh the page, the animation doesn't work. Why? Because we need to specify at least the duration of the animation. You remember with the transitions, we said 1 second, 2 seconds, that's the same thing here. So you can pass a new property. I think there is a shorthand to combine these two, but I'm not sure, to be honest. Animation, duration, 1 second. So we have the animation name, we have the keyframes, and we have the duration of the animation. Yeah? And if I refresh now, oh, you see? Something happening. I'm not hovering the box at all, but once I refresh, something happens. What happened, guys? Can you see any problem here? Any difference, visually speaking, with the transition? What happened at the end of the animation? Does it persist on the full width, on the expanded width? No, it goes back to the original state. That's a bit weird, right? I never understood why that's the default behavior of animation. Never understood it. Because 99% of the time, you don't want that. If you perform an animation, when you get do you want to accept the cookies? Imagine that as soon as the pop-up slides down, it immediately slides up. It's like, what the hell? What does that mean, right? I never understood why that's the default behavior, but we need to deal with that. We need to add a new line to tell the browser, hey, once the animation is over, leave it. Leave it as it is. Don't revert it. Don't roll it back. And how do we do it? We need the third animation property, which is called animation fill mode. And then we can select forward. So forward means animate it in one direction. Once the animation is over, leave it. Don't touch it. Animation fill mode forwards. Does it make sense? And now look, if I refresh, oh, that's it. Stays, yeah? Again, oh, that's it. Any questions? No? Cool. So, can you see any problem here? Let me rephrase the question. Imagine that I want to change the width. The default width, no, shouldn't be 200. It should be 150 or 300, whatever. How many times at the moment, how many lines of code are affected by that potential change on the width of the box? Two, that's correct. That's correct. It's not a big deal, right? I can go here and change it twice. All right. But I hope you agree that this is error prone, because you may forget to change any of this. So is there a way to simplify this a bit? In other words, can I do that? Can I simply say, hey, no, I don't care about the default state. Simply, when we start the animation, set the width to 200 pixels or 100 pixels, and then after 1 second, change it to 500. Can we do that? Let's have a look. It works. Much better, right? So now, if we want to change the animation width, the original width, the only thing we need to do is change it here, and that's it. Yeah? Still works. It's very fast. Let me throttle, let me slow it down a bit. You see, it starts at 300, and eventually it goes up to 500 pixels. To me, that's bad. I don't like that. I don't like that. And let me present you an example of when that mechanism is not working as expected. Imagine that our business analyst says, all right, the animation is good, but it happens very quickly. Can we delay it a bit? So can we display the original size, 300 pixels, for maybe a couple of seconds, and then after a couple of seconds, once everything is rendered, once the user is paying attention to your website, then expand the box. Can we do that? Yes. So there is a new property called animation delay. Correct, Gideon. Animation delay, 2 seconds, for instance. Yeah? So if you do animation delay 2 seconds, this is going to be a bit weird. Pay attention, because the behavior may not be expected. You see what happened? Look, I'm refreshing again. Can anyone tell me what the hell is going on now? If you set an animation delay, that means that the keyframes are going to be ignored by default. On the first 2 seconds, it's the same as not having any animation. If we don't have any animation, this is our source of truth, right? Do we have any width here? No. What's the default width of a div in HTML? Correct, full width. Max is right. A div by default takes all the space. Yeah, tries to conquer all the space. Yeah, like the Germans in the 40s. That was a bad joke. So that's not a good thing. That's the reason why I don't like to initialize my dynamic properties on the from block. Again, that's up to you. If you don't have any delay, it will work. But as soon as you introduce a delay, you're breaking your UI, right? So what I prefer, and I have to admit this is a bit personal, if I need to do that, what I always do is, I always initialize my component here, and then I never have from block. I never do that. Never do that. Always have the final state, 2. And then CSS will understand will understand that. Look now the difference. Now 1, 2, that's it. Much better, right? Again, refreshing. 1, 2, go for it. Much better. So that's the way it works. And now I hope you believe it's very easy to animate other properties. For instance, we want to animate the height. We can just add the height here, right? That's it. We can animate multiple properties at the same time. That's why if you need to do something a bit complex, animations work much better than transitions, because you can definitely play around very easily with all the properties you want to animate. Yeah? Easy. Easy. And of course, we can play with the opacity, right? Opacity 0, opacity 0, and then opacity 1.
So is animation always better than transition?
Is animation what?
Is animation always better than transition?
No, not always. It depends what you need to do. If something can be solved using a transition, go for it, because they are simpler. Transitions are simpler. But in some cases, they are not valid. Again, a transition makes sense if you want to do something simple, reacting to a user interaction. If you hover a box, I want to highlight it. Yeah. So the Codery platform is full of transitions, actually. On the new training, that has been criticized by some of you. Right? Let me see if we can show you. So if I hover, I'm not sure if you can see that. But if I hover a box, you see? Subtle. This is a transition. Because the color is whatever, and when I hover, the color is slightly brighter. It's subtle. A transition. That's simpler. You can we do animation or transition with colors? Yes. Look, background color green, and then after 1 second, background color blue. So hopefully, here you go. More or less, yeah. So some transitions, some animations are a bit controversial. So for instance, I've seen people doing things like that. Display none, and then display block. Something like that. Will it work? Let's have a look. That doesn't really work. That doesn't make any sense at all. So not every single property in CSS can be animated. So to animate a property, it means it can be interpolated. If the original width is 200 and the eventual width is 400, that can be interpolated, because we can go step by step, 201, 202, 203. If the opacity is 0, where is the opacity? I deleted it, I believe. Okay, sorry, I deleted it. If the original opacity is 0 and the eventual opacity is 1, can we interpolate it? Yes, because we can go 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. We can go step by step. Even with colors, we can interpolate colors, right? From red to blue or to green, it will go yellow first, something like that, right? So we can definitely interpolate colors. You know, when you were 10 years old and you go to class and you had to paint and stuff like that, you used to mix colors, right? So colors can be interpolated. But you cannot interpolate display, because display is A or B. There is nothing in between. You cannot be half pregnant. Yeah? So that's the same case. You cannot be half display. That doesn't make sense. All right. So
you said not every element can be animated.
No, not every element. No,
Okay.
no. Oh, let me give you an example. If my font family is Verdana and my eventual for family is Times New Roman, can we interpolate that? No. How can we move from one to the other? This is mind-blowing, right? So the browser will simply ignore you if you try to do something like that. It's not going to break your app. It's not going to break your app. It's simply, Cool. So, yeah. I think from my side, that's pretty much it. Just one more thing here. So this is the most basic way of animating, but if you like this sort of creativity, you can actually interpolate animations. So at the moment we have two states. Init state is here, and eventual state, yeah? A and B. But we can set up some speed traps in between. For instance, look, let's ignore the opacity, only width and height for simplicity reasons. Instead of 2, you can do that. You see? You can set up different percentages. Yeah? So that means that at 20%, can anyone tell me how long it will take the animation to reach the 20%? 0.2, correct, 0.2 of a second, yeah? Because if the animation takes 1 second in total, 20%, after 0.2 seconds, do that. And then after 1 second, I don't know, shrink it a bit. You see? Let's see what happened. Oh, yeah, it's very fast. Let me slow it down. So now after 2 seconds, what is it? Let me refresh. 1, 2. Where is my animation? All right, let me remove the delay. Oh yes, because it's 2 seconds. At 10%, it will take 20 seconds, right? So no. So let's do that. Let's change that. You see, 0.2, and then anyway. So this session is not about creating amazing animation. It's just to make sure you understand how you can play with it. One more thing, guys. I promised you 37 minutes ago that on the next week you may need these things. You may need things, and I'm going to give you help. Generally speaking, everyone, you build your own animations and stuff like that. But to be honest, 90% of the time, the animations you use are pretty common. Yeah, unless you are very specialized on building something very exotic. At the end, we always talk about fading, bouncing, sliding, basic animation, right? Actually, if you go to Codery, especially on the bootcamp side, not on the platform, you will see many animations. Yeah? You see, book your place. Look at how it moves. See, it's a bit hard to see, but anyway, you can see all the. You see, book your place. You see, it's moving at the bottom. All these sort of things. I didn't build these animations by myself. I'm using an external library because it just simplifies my life a bit. I would like to show you that library. The library is called animate.css. It's pretty nice. I really like it. I'm not a big fan of downloading new dependencies to my application, but that one, I have to admit, is really good. Look, first of all, you can play, you see, with different animations. So that gives you an idea about what you can build with it, right? Many different styling. Some of them are pretty common, others are a bit more exotic. Yeah? Many different animations. Look at how good these ones are. Yeah? Why I'm showing that? Because I like to install it now, and I like to play a bit with it, so then you see how it works. The very first thing we need to do is to install it, right? npm install animate.css. So let me copy that, and then back to my terminal. I have a terminal open, so let me stop the server. Someone was asking me this week, hey, why this doesn't work? This is because the server is running, yeah? So if the server is running, you cannot interact with the terminal. So you can either open a new terminal, click on the plus button, or kill the server. Control-C, you kill the server. So now I can interact with the terminal, yeah? npm install animate.css. Takes a while to install it, by the way, I don't know why. So until it gets sorted, I like simply to show you how to use it. The only thing we need to do is go to your JavaScript file and import it. Yeah? If you want to use it, you need to import it. And how do you import it? Import animate.css. That's it. You only have to do it once if you import it in your app.javascript. Yeah? Cool. Let me start the server again. And now let's see how to use it. I will simply, of course, there is a lot of documentation about different styles, but let me just copy that full example. So now I'm going to delete my code, and I'll explain how this works in a second. So let me just delete everything, just to prove that I'm not in, making any impact on that. You see, only H1, a title. Let's see if it works or not. Right, doesn't work. Let me see why. Oh, class name, right? That's important, guys. Remember, we cannot use class, so be class name in React. Right, it doesn't work. That's interesting. Is it animate or animated? Maybe I type it wrong. No, that's correct. Animated CSS. That's really weird. Oh, am I delaying? Oh, I'm delaying at 10%. Sorry. I need to be careful with that, guys. You see, at some point before, oh, now it's working. You see, I changed it to 10%. So if the animation takes 2 seconds, it already takes 20. That's why it looked like it wasn't working. So be careful with that. Look, you see? I got my first animation for free without doing any CSS. So what can we change here? Look, the first class name, this is important, super important. We need to do that. We need to have the class name animated. So then the library will start, hey, the developer is trying to do something with me, right? And then we can set up some properties. First of all, infinite. That means the animate will be ongoing, right? If you delete it, it will run only once. Look. Once, that's it. Yeah? Only once. What else can we set up? Of course, the delay. Yeah, you remember the delay? That's pretty cool, right? This is very declarative. Delay 1 second, 2 seconds. Up to you, right? It depends on your appetite. Yeah? And finally, the most important one, the type of animation. In this example, we got bounce. But hey, we can go back to the website and we can play around. Instead of bounce, zoom out. Let's try that. Zoom out. You see? It's pretty cool, eh? Anyway, play a bit with it. In the long term, I strongly recommend you to use animations, but don't get overexcited. I hope you agree with me. It feels a bit annoying when you go to the website and everything is moving. It's like, oh, what the hell is going on, right? So it's good to use them a bit, but like spicy food. Good to use it a bit, but don't get overexcited, even though that's a bit personal. Yeah? Recruiters and tech companies, they love these things. You give the feeling to non-technical people that you know a lot, even though that's free sugar. It takes you nothing, 1 minute, yeah, to do these things. So definitely take that into consideration. That's it from my side, guys. Do you have any questions? No? People on the other side of the line, Sara, Damiano, Cam. Do you have any?
All good, all clear, thanks.
Cool, thank you. Yep, so that was it, guys.